Hola todos, bonjour, Ahman, ni hao. Dude, I'm breaking up all the languages today. Can you
There
guess
we
which ones I
go.
was using there?
I think the first one was Spanish, if my however many years of Spanish experience
Dude,
don't fail
how'd
me.
you know? How
Ah,
did you
so
know,
proud.
dude?
And then bonjour sounds like French, so I'm gonna
Yeah,
guess that.
yep.
Uh, and I don't even remember what the other two you said. So
I said Ahman, which fun fact is Arabic for hello, in honor of the World Cup draw that took place a couple days ago. I'm breaking out the Arabic because it's in Qatar and I'm Jewish for this World Cup. Fun
there we
fact, I might be
go.
going to Qatar.
Alrighty.
So, anyways, enough of that intro. Welcome back to the Langringos podcast. This is our second episode. I'm here with my co-host, co-patriot, my great friend Derek. Derek, how are we doing today, man?
We are doing well. We are doing very well. Ready to get started. Excited. Been a little bit. So yeah.
Definitely has been a bit. We're just gonna get straight to the meat and potatoes of this episode. As you all, I'm not sure if you all listened to the first episode, but initially we were talking about the American language dilemma. We kind of covered a lot of things that we wish could change about languages in the United States, why they're not as prevalent, what Americans' perceptions of the outside world are, stuff like that. And one of the reasonings was the fact that there just exists so many different misconceptions here in the United States about languages, and reasons that people might not want to go out and learn them, which might lead to a lack of motivation, et cetera, which we figure is essentially an episode in its own. So today we're going to be going through around 5 or 6 different misconceptions that we have, talking about our own experiences, any examples. And I know, Derek, you're a big metaphor analogy guy. We're going to be all sorts of different things we're going to be covering in this episode today. So if you want, Derek, take us away with our first misconception of languages in the United States of America.
Okay. So, I've talked to some people in my life, right? And something I've heard is that if you want to become fluent in another language, you have to live in another country for X number of years, whether that be 5, 10, 15, 20. And that's true, right?
Oh, yeah. I think that's the only way to do it, right?
It's impossible to do it any other way.
Actually impossible, right?
Yeah. No, we are kidding, everyone.
Got him.
That is our first misconception. Very much, you do not have to live in that country to learn the language, especially with technology nowadays. We kind of sound like some boomers talking about how great technology is, but it is true. There's so much that you can do from the comfort of your own home without leaving your room, without leaving your bed even. So some of the things that you can do, and some of what we've done, is you can take classes with people online, right? That's great, and there are plenty of websites and apps like that. Personal favorite of mine for classes is Italki. You can find tutors and actual professional teachers for pretty cheap, so it's really cool. Anyways, another thing you can do is something that we've done a great deal of, right? And that's replacing everything, or at least a great deal of what you do on a daily basis, with your target language, right? So we all listen to music, we all watch shows, right? And why not do those things in the language that you're trying to learn? There's really not any reason not to, right?
There's
Maybe that was
not
too many
any reason
negatives.
not to.
Maybe that was too many negatives there.
This
But
isn't
anyway,
Spanish, dude. There's no double negatives.
I know, right? Sorry, everyone. But yeah, essentially, there are so many reasons to do so, and no reason that you shouldn't, right? So, because there are so many great shows in every language. Netflix has been doing a great job with it. This isn't sponsored. We wish it was.
One day we will be, right?
Yeah, Netflix, if you're listening, we're here. But yeah, there are a lot of great shows just in every language. There's been a whole bunch in Spanish in recent years. And we're certain that there's a whole bunch. I know my sister tells me all the time that there are a whole bunch of new shows in Italian, for example. So I'm sure that they're branching out a great bit, right? Second, I guess, is like what, or not second misconception, but just kind of going along with this, right? Is that you have to live in a country to become fluent. Well, it depends on your definition of fluency, right? So I don't know if you want to get started on this one, Nick.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of times too, in the United States, people will say, oh, I need to live in that country to become fluent.
Mhm.
So I can essentially have fluency be my level of English, just in a different language.
Mhm.
And that's not definitely, like, that's not true, to be exact. Like, if that's what your definition of fluency is, I shouldn't say it's not true. Like, if that's what your conception of fluency is, then yeah, probably you would have to live in a country for a very long time to get towards that
Yeah.
level, because your native country, you've been living there for a long time and you are around it every single day, and that's what you were wired to speak, and you learned while you were young.
Mhm.
But I think what a lot of people don't realize is you don't have to reach that level in order to be able to communicate with people on a daily basis without problems.
Yeah.
And I think, at least in my opinion, and what I think the most accurate definition of fluency is being able to find a way to communicate with anybody without struggle, without having to think, essentially, like without having to think super hard, and essentially using the words and grammar structures that you already know to communicate with them, and
Mhm.
essentially utilizing the tools you already have in order to communicate with them effectively. It's not about knowing every single word in the language. I still don't know every single word in the English language.
You
And in
don't?
order to do oh, actually, no, I think I don't. I just learned what the meaning of harbinger was the other day, and I think that's a great word. And I'm 21 years old, and I had no idea about it.
I
So
still don't know that one, and
yeah,
I'm 23, so
I think I'm ahead of you, man.
I
But
might learn it one day.
you will. You definitely will. I'm going to start using it.
Alrighty.
But yeah, it's all just about, learning enough words, learning enough grammar structures, and being able to utilize that in your head in order to communicate with people effectively. Like, if you're trying to find a specific word, there's other ways of explaining it. Like, if I want to say the word textbook and I don't know how to say textbook, I'd be like, oh, pues estoy intentando buscar un libro que uso en mi clase, or like, a book that I use in my class instead of a textbook. It's not the exact word per se, but you're describing the word. And that's essentially everything you do in your native language. Well, if you don't know what a word means, you look it up and you get the definition in English and you use other words to piece together what it means.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of times people might think that fluency is so hard to achieve and so hard to get to that they don't want to go out and learn another language. I don't know what you think about fluency, Derek, and what your
Yeah.
definition is. It's different for everybody.
Well, yeah, I think one thing is that kind of like dilemma where people see it as like a barrier to entry, right? And it's the fact that, oh, just because I'm never going to be able to learn perfect French or whatever language, because I can't go and live in France for 30 years, I might as well not try. That it just doesn't make sense, right? And it's the same thing of like someone that maybe like they want to start going to the gym or something like that, and they're like, oh, just because I'm not going to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't, like, just because of that means I should never work out. It's like, no, you work out for all the other benefits for the health and everything like that. Not
That's why
to
you go
be
to Crunch, bro. Like,
yeah, no, Crunch. Sad story. I was a member of Crunch Fitness and it closed. Very sad. So now
Rest in
we are,
peace, Crunch Fitness.
yeah. Now we are on Team
That
24.
location, obviously, the company still exists, but just that specific
Yeah,
location
yeah.
holds a very special place in Derek's heart and a little bit of my heart as well. Anyways,
yeah. And then as far as the definition of fluency, yeah, I think you hit it right on the head there, buddy. It's really just being able to express yourself without too much strain, about a variety of topics, and if you don't know a word, I guess fluency is what happens when you don't know a word and you're still able to get your point across, like you said.
exactly. That's a great
right?
point. Mhm.
And maybe you don't know the word for deny, but you can say not accept, and so those little things are fluency. A lot of people have like 20-30 minute videos on YouTube discussing what is fluency. We're not going to dive that deep into it because we think it's kind of pointless to talk too much about it. A lot of times you can kind of get caught up in the question as opposed to just going and doing something about it, right? So because we don't want to get caught up in a discussion about oh, is it possible to be fluent, or what is even fluency or whatever? And then you never start learning, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
so yeah.
essentially, what our point is, fluency is not as hard to achieve as you think it is. It's obviously going to take some hard work and dedication and repetition.
Mhm.
But like Derek said, you can do it from your house. Like I became fluent in Spanish during the pandemic, and obviously I wasn't able to travel, and it was me, being able to have some time on my hands and just taking everything I do on a daily basis in English, things that I already enjoy, watching Netflix, listening to music, listening to podcasts. I'm a big soccer fan, so I listen to a lot of soccer podcasts. I listen to ESPN FC, for example. Well, there's ESPN Deportes, and
Mhm.
it's different people, but they're still talking about the exact same thing. And, we were able to meet people, do lessons online and talk to tutors. We were able to meet people online. It's like I talked to people from all across the globe and met them and became friends with them without even meeting them in person by doing it
Yeah.
online. Like if there is a time to learn a language online through technology,
It's
now's the
now.
time to do it.
Yeah.
The time is now. And obviously it's not, as you don't get that direct contact with the culture and the language,
Mhm.
which definitely has its benefits to it. But just to get started and get that base and become fluent, it's so achievable. It really is.
Yeah, no, and I think that this whole misconception of it's impossible to become fluent unless you go to the country is something that's rather outdated, because maybe, 50 years ago, when there wasn't the technology that there is today, yeah, it really was like the most feasible option to really go and become fluent, right? Now it's like, sure, it certainly does a lot of the work for you, right? And it's makes it a lot easier if you're just constantly surrounded by the language. You don't actually have to put forth any effort. But there's so many things that we can do now, and because it's really just not an option for most people just to drop everything they're doing and move to Europe, right? But yeah, and then also just like I think getting to like a good level really takes a different amount of time for everyone, right? And there are always these programs that are like uh, get fluent, and it's like a 10-week track to fluency, or think in English, or whatever the language may be, right? In 5 weeks or whatever. It's like, that's a lie. It's the same thing, like the pill that is going to make you lose 20 pounds. It's like, no, it just doesn't exist, right? So yeah, I think that by kind of throwing away and discarding all that false stuff and kind of filtering through, what's true and what could be true and what's clearly false definitely helps. But I guess as like a counter thing to that, moving to another country, right? There are plenty of people, and I guess this kind of gets into fluency versus like speaking a language perfectly, right? So going back to our buddy Arnold that we just mentioned, he's been in the US for I don't know how long. He has a very marked and noticeable accent, right? So does someone like, for example, Sofia Vergara from Colombia, right? So they don't speak perfect English, but they are by all means fluent in the language. So it kind of depends on your goal a little bit too, right? But also, and I guess a quick note with them is they've kind of made that their trademark, that they've kind of made that their role, and that's how they're going to get their movie roles and stuff like that, because they're so famous for having that accent and stuff. But I guess it's just an example of like you could move to another country and really not put in the effort, and you get fluent in some time. um but if you want to speak the language like perfectly, you are going to have to do it on your own, and you might as well just do it on your own from your house. So
Exactly. And going off your point too, Derek, about speaking a language perfectly, like is that really even achievable? Like we're obviously native English speakers.
mhm.
I make grammar mistakes once in a while. There's certain words I don't know. So
Yeah.
even I don't speak perfect English. I don't, everyone's capabilities with language are different. As long as you can communicate with people and
Mhm.
get your message across, like you said, and any, doesn't matter which way it is, as long as you get your message across with the words and the grammar structures,
Yeah.
you're fluent and you can communicate with anybody. And that's when it gets even more fun, when you can just start talking to people. And that's what language is for. That's the whole reason why we learn languages.
Yeah, and talking about having fun, if any of our listeners wants to go back through however long we've been talking for, Nick has made exactly 11 grammatical errors in English. If anyone wants to go and find them, I'm just kidding.
You're making me lose all
I
my
haven't been
credibility,
counting.
dude. Hey,
What?
anyone who finds them gets they get a prize. We're gonna name that prize later.
Yeah, we'll interview you in the next episode.
Yeah, you'll get a free interview.
Oh man, no, I'm kidding. I don't know if we've probably said something wrong by now.
Yeah. You guys, but
I don't know.
but we just proved our point then. You can't
Mhm.
speak a language completely perfect.
Exactly.
So
And I feel like that's enough for misconception number one. Do you
yeah,
want to
we
get
definitely have gone very in depth into this one. Let's move on to our next misconception. And this one is kind of applicable to other things in life per se, but I've heard it a lot with languages too, is I can't learn another language because I'm just not good at it, or I'm not born to learn another language.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, look across the globe. And this is what I'm going to say is, look at how many people have been able to learn another language.
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying, well, I wasn't born to become the next LeBron James. Like,
You weren't?
yeah, I'm not LeBron, but I still am a good basketball player. Like I can, I still play, I'm still athletic and I can still play the sport. It's with language. Like, you don't have to be born to do anything. With enough hard work and enough dedication, especially with languages and repetition. And our biggest key is just finding the ways to enjoy it. Because in that way, you don't even have to dig deep and find that motivation.
Yeah.
And it's so achievable. So many different people have done it.
Yeah, no,
there's no reason why
that's something that we talk about a lot, and we're going to continue to talk about and really hammer that home, that if you make whatever your language learning process is enjoyable, then you don't have to think about it. You don't have to find time to do it. And you're going to look back and 6 months has passed and you're like, crap, like I'm a lot better at speaking Spanish or whatever it was than I was 6 months ago, So it's really cool. Like when you find like an old audio message or something like that and you listen, you're like, oh God, like my accent was awful then, or I made some mistake, it's really cool to look back on. But yeah, and I guess this whole thing about not being good at it, right? It really depends on the method. I remember early on, so probably like 3 years ago or something like that, I watched one video on YouTube. I believe it was by TED, like TED Talks, and I believe it was called How Polyglots Learn Languages. And it was this lady, and she was talking about all these methods that these polyglots have used, and it was really cool and really eye-opening that, you just have to find what works for you, really, like, I guess as a personal anecdote, my paternal grandmother, she says that she wishes she would have learned Spanish, but she was never any good at it, right? Granted, she was born in the 1930s, so it was a bit different, right? And she didn't have access to the internet and whatnot, at least not to my knowledge. You never know.
You could be a time traveler.
Yeah, but she always said that the structure that they kind of imposed on about it, or imposed on the students in school of like these grammatical tables and like memorizing this vocabulary and stuff like that just didn't work for her. But she's a tremendous like artist. She used to paint a whole bunch and draw a whole bunch, and like even now she colors a whole bunch, just kind of staying in touch with that. So it's like, obviously it makes sense that like a formulaic approach wasn't going to work for her, and it sounds so clear going forward, like, or looking back, but I think it's something that can be applied to everyone. You have to find what works for you. Like, just because we preach like watching Netflix and watching YouTube and listening to music and whatever, right? Just because we're fans of that doesn't mean it necessarily works for you. It's worked for us and it's worked for a lot of people, so we suggest it as like a starting point, right? But yeah, like, my grandma would have definitely had a much better time if she was able to like relate learning a language to being like more creative, right? Because that formulaic approach, she's always said, she's like, I'm really bad at math, and like, granted, language isn't math, but there certainly is like a creative and like a cultural component to everything, right? So I think, hindsight's always 2020, but we can learn from that experience, and hopefully someone can kind of use this going forward and not say, I'm not good at learning languages, so I'm just not going to try.
Yeah, it's like anything in life. I wasn't born to do this. I'm not good at it, so I'm not going to try.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a shot, give it a whirl. Like, it's like you said, everyone's experience with it is different. Everyone in life has different things they love, different living habits. They do different things every day and different styles of living. It's all about finding ways to incorporate it. And the thing with language learning is it's so general and so broad, and there's so many different ways of incorporating it into your daily life that you're going to find a way to do it no matter what it might be. And it might take some time. To find that took me some time, but once I got in the groove, like Derek said, you're gonna look down the line 6 months, 4 months, whatever it may be down the line, and you're gonna be like, you're not even gonna realize how much you're improving until like someone points it out, or
Yeah.
you listen to an old audio message, and you're like, holy crap, like this,
Yeah.
you're surrounded by this all the time. It's literally like an artificial environment, like we talked about earlier, creating that environment of being in the language and not just studying in school. And that's essentially its own episode in itself, like
Yeah.
language learning in schools, and
Yeah.
you just reading from textbooks and studying vocab.
Mhm.
That's not learning a language. Like
Yeah.
obviously you're learning some of the basics, but that's not actually going out and speaking it. The whole reason why we learn languages is to talk with other people. You don't do that in schools.
No, and definitely like just because maybe someone got like a C in their high school Spanish class, right? So now they use that as like a reason to not learn Spanish. It's like that
Mhm.
it doesn't mean anything, right? Like just because you weren't good at something when you were 16 doesn't mean you can't be good at it now. And just because you weren't good at something in a very specific way of it being taught doesn't mean that you won't excel in another way of it being taught,
Yeah, do not by
so
any means let a letter grade, like a very subjective form of or
yeah,
objective form of grading somebody, deter you from learning a language.
yeah. No,
Like
it's
it's a
it's still
letter. It's
really
school.
right.
It's studying vocab. It's reading literature and reading comprehension. It's not actually learning, like you're learning the language part of it, but that's not giving you a grade on your ability to speak Spanish.
Yeah.
It's not. It's your ability just to do well in the class. So do not by any means, no matter, you could get a 0% in the Spanish class and you can still learn the language.
Yeah.
Like I
No,
got a 0% in all my Spanish class. No, I'm kidding. But like it's still achievable. It really
yeah.
is.
Yeah, no, and that TED Talk video that I mentioned, I believe one of the people that she talks about, like one of her friends, they did like really poorly in like their English classes or whatever. And then at like 30, they were just like, oh, I'm just gonna try this different method. And it worked wonders. And now like that person speaks like 5, 6, 7 languages. It's like what? Like and it's just because they weren't a prodigy growing up. It doesn't mean anything, it doesn't
Mhm.
because you weren't good at a class. That's like But anyways, I feel like that's enough
Exactly.
here.
Yeah.
You want to get
Let's
started with the next misconception?
let's ride it. Let's ride the wave into the next misconception we got here. And here's what I'm gonna say. And
Okay.
this one,
Oh boy.
I don't want to say it infuriates me, man, but it's like, okay, we need to talk about this. It's people
We
who
need to.
don't yeah, anyways, here's people who don't speak English as their first language are at a disadvantage because they can't speak our language. Essentially, somebody who like doesn't speak language at or doesn't speak English as their first language or doesn't speak it at home, they're at a disadvantage, and like that sucks.
Mhm.
Does it suck, man?
Sucks a lot, man. Yeah. No, this is
This
unreal.
blows, dude.
Unreal. Yeah. Let's hear it. Take
um,
it away.
here's the thing that bugs me about this, and I will say the first part I'll say is it part of it is true. Not that they're at a disadvantage, but when they first move here, or whether they don't speak English at all, if someone moves to the United States, yeah, it's going to be tough to learn English because that's like a misconception or whatever. But once you learn English, or not because it's a misconception, because it's a struggle, or because it's like it's an inconvenience per se. But once you learn that second language, like once you learn English and start communicating with people, I mean, we're gonna do a whole episode on this after about benefits of being bilingual. But
Mhm.
at this point, you speak two languages, and sure, whatever, you have an accent in English, or you make some grammatical mistakes in English. So what? Are you kidding me? Like being able to speak two languages by
Mhm.
by no means at all is that like, are you at a disadvantage compared to other people?
Yeah. No,
By no means
and
at all.
yeah, they say, like I've watched a lot of polyglot videos. I don't know, I find them pretty entertaining. It's kind of hard not to get caught up in that, but after a while, I kind of pull myself out of that YouTube rabbit hole. But they say that like each language that you learn, the next one becomes easier because you just like what works for you just becomes so clear, and you just have like I guess your strategies and everything in place so perfectly that it's just it's you know X times faster than when you learned your second or third language or whatever, right? Learning your fourth or your fifth. Not saying that everyone has to do that, right? It's perfectly fine just to learn one language. That's all we're encouraging here. But yeah, and I think that one thing, like, I guess maybe where this misconception stems from, is that like English is a very widely spoken language, so it's like a valuable resource, right? So if you're going and doing like a language exchange, being able to help someone with English is definitely, definitely great. Like some of my language exchange partners, they've said that it's been a lot harder for them to like find someone that's like wanting to learn Spanish. And I was like, really? Because we go on that app Tandem, right? And we just get flooded with messages, and there are just so many people, right? It's like, oh my god, like you feel like a little celebrity, but yeah, just because so many people want to learn English, right? Because it's such a high in demand language. But even if you're trying to learn English or whatever, you're trying to learn some language that doesn't really, I guess, isn't really common, or you speak a language that isn't really common, there's always going to be someone wanting to learn that language or wanting to interchange. It's just a matter of, it might not be as easy to find that person, and they might not be as readily available, but they're still out there, so
they're out there, man, without question. And going off of a similar note as well, people who also have the opportunity, like I'm gonna sound like MLK right here, but if I had a dream, I would be like, I would have parents from a different country. As crazy as this sounds, like having parents from a different country, to where your first language is the language you learn, like your parents' language, which isn't English. And then you speak both at home, especially like growing up in that environment where you can speak both of them very well. And you can also go out in school and meet friends and live in a country that obviously speaks English. So let's say your parents are from Mexico and you grew up in a Spanish speaking house, but obviously you're going to speak English too, because you can go outside and go to school and essentially live in that other language in that country like that. And that's sometimes too, like where I've heard like, oh, those people are at a disadvantage, they're speaking a second language at home. In what way is learning another language a bad thing?
No, it makes no sense.
And I've heard this too. I've literally heard this, dude. I'm like, how in the world is this a bad thing?
And it's like, oh, maybe like they have an accent in English, right? And they're being judged by someone that only speaks English. And it's like, okay, they're literally smarter than you because they can speak two languages. Like, you have nothing on them, like,
yeah. Why criticize? Yeah. And that's the whole thing too, is especially in the United States, like people just don't understand the language learning process. Like a lot of people don't, and they don't respect it enough. So that's why we're like, oh, that person speaks with an accent, like, blah, blah, blah. Their accent's so funny. Well, guess what would happen if you learned another language? You would have an accent as well, because it's hard to acquire a native accent, especially in the English language, because our pronunciation is the most messed up and hard probably of any language in the world.
Yeah.
So and at the end of the day, they speak two languages and you don't. Not trying to trash on those people, but like, why would you criticize somebody for knowing two languages and making fun of them when they know more than you do when it comes to languages, and they speak two languages and communicate with more people?
Yeah. This exactly like what I told my family that moved here from Brazil, right? I told them, I was like, if anyone ever, and I mean ever, gives you guys a hard time about your English or whatever, I almost wanted to say just put up a middle finger, but obviously that'd be a little dramatic. But just don't take it the wrong way, because you're doing something, learning a second language, that they've likely not done if they're kind of giving you crap for it, because anyone that's been through it is not going to give anyone else crap about it. It's like, I was like, if they, anyone ever makes fun of your English or ever like says you have an accent or whatever, okay, you're doing something that they're not doing, so you're winning. They have no reason to make fun of you because you're winning. So yeah, we can't stress that enough.
Yeah, but, it's so, like I said, it's not infuriating per se, but it's like, oh my god, and it's just very questionable and head scratching when people
like,
say
come
that.
on, man.
Yeah,
come on.
Exactly. It is. So I think that's enough for our, was that our third or fourth misconception? I already lost
That was our third one.
Our third. Let's keep rolling. Let's keep rolling into number 4. And I'm gonna say this one too. This is another one. Uh, Again, not infuriating, but it's like this is one that needs to be addressed per se, and that is and we've heard this a lot as well. I am too busy to learn another language. I'll do it over the summer or when I'm not in school, or I'll wait till I graduate and get a job, or I'll
Yeah.
wait until the moon is blue at a waning crescent 34%, and then that way I'll have more time because it's gonna make the universe align and give me more time. What is wrong with this, Derek?
What did you say is my question.
How do you not you don't understand that? What?
I don't speak Korean, bro.
Astrology, dude.
Oh God. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. No, it's something, it's just like one, it's like, okay, I'm gonna wait to start learning a language until I can sit down and study grammar books and vocab books for 6 hours per day. One, if you had 6 hours per day to do it, I highly doubt you would actually study grammar and vocab books for 6 hours a day. One, I personally don't find that fun. Maybe you do, nothing against it, but I'm just saying, like, who's really going to do that? And it's just, why wait? Why wait? There's no reason to wait. It's, you might as well just get started. And then when you're freed up over the summer, when your classes end or whatever, right? Then you can kind of really, I guess, put it in the next year, and really just go extra hard. But there's no reason to wait until, like, you have time. And we've talked about this a bit, and we're going to continue talking about it, just replacing what you do and just filling in the gaps, and it's like maybe, let's say after you take a shower, right, while you're getting dressed. Normally you don't do that with music or with a podcast or anything like that, but you definitely could, and it's like however long that is, or while you're making your breakfast and just your commute to work or school or walking from one class to another, right? There's so many little gaps throughout the day that can just be filled with something, ideally learning a language, that I think oftentimes we aren't aware of, and it's not really until like you kind of audit yourself and audit what you're doing and how much you're actually consuming of like how much content you're actually consuming, right? That you realize like, wow, like I could be definitely, I have time, and just because you don't have time to sit down and study, it's like, I work a full-time job. I don't have time to sit down and study Spanish all the time, but almost every night I have 30 minutes to an hour to watch Netflix. That's good. In my 30-minute lunch break, I normally watch an episode or something, or a couple of videos on YouTube. It's just about filling in the gaps with the time that you do have.
Exactly. And that's something that I've incorporated in my life. And thankfully, Derek, you've taught me about this as well. And like you said, everyone's life is different. Like you said, you work a full-time job. I'm a college student. But like you said, I'm going to go, I got to go to work in 30 minutes. Well, I'm going to shower. While I shower, I'm going to put on some Yatra or some Eladio Carrion, even though I don't listen to him, but you get the point. Like you can put on some Spanish music or a podcast, and then, all right, well, it's a 15-minute walk to work for me. Mm-hmm. If that's 15 minutes to put in my headphones and listen to a podcast, listen to whatever. And
just think of that accumulated over time,
15 it's minutes, huge
5 times per week. Yeah. Almost every week of the year. It's like, that's a lot.
It's huge. And you don't realize how much just listening to this language is and getting your ears accustomed to it. It's massive. Listening is very important. Mm-hmm. And what I will say too is, not like this contradicts my point, but yes, there will be times in your life in periods in your life where you might not be able to do as much in Spanish or learning another language as in other times. But as long as you find a way to keep in contact with it somehow, whether it be through music or podcasts, whatever it may be, or you only get 15 minutes a day, as long as you keep in contact with that language, it's natural. It's like anything in life, there's going to be times where your life changes a little bit and you can't do certain things for certain amounts of time. And, you maybe get some more time to have freed up, and then you are able to talk to people more. You're able to do more things. Like that's life. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. And just know that that's okay. But as far as starting goes, you don't have to, when you start, you don't have to sit down 4 hours a day and then from there it gets easier. Just start somewhere.
Yeah, because it's not feasible to do that either. And I think another thing is oftentimes like we kind of lie to ourselves about like what we're actually doing,
Mhm.
so even like I'm guilty of this sometimes, and it's like, oh, maybe I didn't hit, maybe I'd like watched something in English during my lunch break or whatever, right? Like I watched a movie, like okay, it happens like every once in a while, it's okay, but as long as like you don't let it become a habit, and like it's bad when you're trying to justify it. It's like, oh, but like, so I didn't like really do anything in Spanish today, but like, oh, I went to the store and like I talked to the cashier. It's like, okay, that was like a 2-minute conversation. Sure, it's
Yeah.
better than nothing, but it like you can't use that as like a justification to not, kind of
Mhm.
actually put in the work somewhere. Like
Yeah.
just the meme, it's like you can't escape the grind, but it's true to an extent, but
Yeah.
obviously you're trying to make the grind the least grindy possible, you're trying
Yeah.
to make it most enjoyable, but you're not going to learn a language overnight. You're not going to learn it not having any contact with it. It's just something that's going to take some time, and it's going to take some time. It's going to take some effort. It's just you
Mhm.
got to find a way to fit that into your life and make it enjoyable.
Mhm.
Because
Exactly. And
you're not going to have just all day out of nowhere. Like
mhm.
barring some major change in your life, you're not just going to have 10 hours a day
Yeah.
free.
Exactly. And like I mentioned earlier as well, when you start, like just start somewhere. Don't be afraid. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whenever it be, whether it be right after you start listening or stop listening to this episode, which we hope, but obviously, might not, or tomorrow or next week. Find that time to start and just watch a video in Spanish, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't understand half of it, if you don't understand the entire thing, that's fine. Like that's where it starts. Like when I started watching videos like native content in Spanish, there were times where I had no idea what in the world they were saying. Like, oh my gosh, they speak so fast. But this
Mm-hmm.
is that repetition we talk about where once you start listening repeatedly at that speed, you're going to make things out so clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. No, yeah. I remember my first time,
Mhm.
I think I was watching it was like one of my first times listening to Bad Bunny. He's from Puerto Rico, and they speak really quickly, and they have all this slang and stuff like that. And like the first song I listened to by him, I liked the beat. I was like, that's why I like it. And like I understood like a couple words in the chorus. I was like, oh, that was good. And now like I can listen to his songs and like I get like almost everything on like the first listen to like a brand new song, and like it just really makes me feel good, of like how much I've progressed in a couple of years or whatever, right? But yeah, just get started somewhere. Please don't be scared by, don't make it a daunting task, because there's legit no barrier to entry. Like starting with a 5-minute video is enough. It's enough to start, and just kind of get that ball rolling. Um, don't make it feel like you have to go and talk to a native speaker on the first day. That's intimidating, for 90% of us. I'm sure some people are like, no, let's do it. There are crazy people for everything, right? But, for most people, that's intimidating. So, find something that's not, and just
Mhm.
kind of ease your way into it if you have to. But the important thing is just to kind of get started and get that ball rolling.
And even if that is like, if that's not intimidating to you and that's the way you start, then that's the way you start. And if you don't understand anything that the person's saying and the conversation goes terribly, so be it. Like, I don't know, you've probably all heard the quote, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Well, sometimes that first step you trip and fall and you
Yeah.
get up again, then you trip and fall, but it's all about finding your footing and knowing that like in the long run, once you keep going and once you keep going one foot in front of the other, you're going to
Mhm.
find your footing.
Yeah. And if you fall, you're falling forward more likely than not.
Exactly.
So
You're definitely falling
that's
forward.
still moving a couple inches or a foot or two forward.
Exactly. Move those pylons.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know if you got anything else, Derek, but I think that's
No,
enough
I'm good at that one. I'm good at that
for
one.
misconception number 4. And this last misconception, we're going to pull like a Sony Pictures right here and give you a little teaser trailer for the next
Easy.
episode. And that is this: there is no point in me learning another language. Why should I do it?
I don't
And
know.
yeah, you want to just like stop recording this podcast? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not,
let's do it.
not worth
Just kidding. Just kidding.
it. But this is something we've heard a lot, and we think this is so important that we're going to create an entire episode on this, and that'll be our episode 3.
Mhm.
And the benefits of learning another language, because they pretty much go hand in hand. And I'm gonna say this, and this is gonna be, I'm gonna try and make this into a little summary, and do a little spark note summary of
Can you do
this
it?
entire episode. Essentially, one, you can communicate with so many different people from all around the world. With that comes unbelievable experiences that you're never going to forget for the rest of your life. We'll go more into that next episode as well, the things that we've experienced. Number three, it's fun, and you can incorporate it into your daily life.
Mhm.
And lastly, I will say too, and this is potentially another motivator for a lot of people, and it's valid, but it shouldn't be your only reason to learn another language, is it looks good on a resume, and you're more marketable, which you are. It's true. Like it very much is. And I think that's just kind of like a cherry on top. Derek, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that little summary right there.
No, I think, short of diving right in, which it's tempting. It's tempting, but we're gonna respect everyone's time.
Yeah, it's like we're like a dog, like looking at like a bowl of food, and we're just on a leash, and we can't, like we just want to pounce on it. Our mouths are watering right now. We're ready just to pounce, but we can't.
And we're just waiting on that. Okay, right?
Yeah, exactly. We've just made so many analogies and metaphors already.
So many.
Yeah,
Maybe
we
we should just
apologize,
change the
but
name
we just love it.
the analogy podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
Well,
but no, I mean, I think that's, for me, that's good, man. I think we covered everything I wanted to cover.
Yeah, I don't have anything else either. So we appreciate you all so much in listening to our misconceptions episode, all of the misconceptions that we have heard. And again, we want to clarify, we're not stereotyping everybody and saying that everybody in the United States thinks this way. We compile this list of personal experiences of things that we have heard from people. And we feel like it's kind of common across the US, not saying everybody does that. And we just want to highlight these and help you all out and know that these don't exist and they're not true. And there's ways around them. And reason number 1 million as to why you all should go out and start learning another language, no matter when it may be, where it may be, what it may be, just to go out and do it, because the benefits are endless. And we're going to be going more into that in our next episode. And like I said, thank you all again so much for listening. If you really liked our episode, feel free to leave us a like. Go check us out on wdbmimpact.org. Check out some other cool podcasts on there as well. Feel free to follow us on Instagram. Check us out on YouTube as well. We're on Spotify and YouTube. If you want to listen to a podcast form, YouTube form, whatever you all prefer. Once again, we really
beautiful faces.
What's that?
If you want to see our beautiful faces on YouTube.
Yeah. Being biased, I recommend the YouTube form just so you can see it. No, okay. But whatever you
maybe don't go on YouTube.
Yeah, no, I don't think you should go on YouTube. But yeah, we really appreciate it. Check us out, whatever platform you all want to. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. lingeringghostpodcast@gmail.com. We're always super responsive. Leave a comment, whatever it may be. Feel free to leave us a like. And once again, thank you all so much.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Until next time.